I'm ready to sound off about daily fantasy sports player pricing from last week. How did we do last week in DFS? Steelers and Pats. Tomlinson has a tough time at home. What now for the Steelers? Are we really playing Flacco this week in DFS? All of the info we need to absolutely destroy week 14 awaits. Now is the time we can see the whites of their eyes. It's time to go grab the victory. Let's start off with a little bit of housekeeping and just how we did last week. Really frustrating. Russell Wilson did not pan out in terms of the DFS lineup for a couple of reasons. Number one, namely though, is just the inability to convert in the red zone. A lot of turnovers. That was a big problem for the Broncos. So we didn't get the return on investment. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but obviously could have been a lot better uh, given the environment. So we missed out there. Purdy, I thought was going to be popular. Hurts also turns out should have went there, as we will talk about in a second here. But AJ Brown was fine, serviceable, not exactly what you want to see at 8,800, but he didn't burn you. Mike Evans was good. Josh Downs did nothing for us. Cortland Sutton was great. He did what we needed, and paying down at the running backs did not work. So a lot of busts last week. So really want to take some time and focus on that as a conversation and I guess if we want to think about last week in general, it's very apparent what's going on with the pricing on DraftKings, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's air it out right at the top of the show here. There is absolutely no way that in a plus minus matchup, like a plus matchup for Purdy, who's now being talked about, by the way, in the MVP combo, should he have been priced at $6,100? That's simply making everyone go there. That was the price that you paid for Purdy last week. It feels like we're, all kind of being herded to this too good to be true pricing, if you will. You look at it and it's like, what's the catch? It feels like we are all getting better. It feels like these sites, particularly DraftKings, are getting more craftier, and it's because we are getting better. We get better. They make it harder. That's what's going on. Before it was changing the quantity of certain types of contests. What else was it? It was changing the payout. We've seen that. Then it was the number of entries. So now this is what we have because we've gotten so much better at daily fantasy sports. Now they're actively hurting us onto certain players in a way that you can't afford to miss out on or ignore. That's what we're seeing on Sunday in DraftKings and these pricing algorithms for the players. All this is so that we all have to. So many of us play the same players, and it comes down to just a couple of key players, one or two players, instead of this diversified lineup. Realizing that they're doing this because they're realizing we are too good when we can just pick from fairly priced players. We got that covered. We got that covered. Here at the process, been winning off that for years, right? So they have to do what they need to do to get ahead on us. We have to take this as what it is. It's a nod that we are doing things right. And so now we have to adapt because they've adapted. So we will do that for sure. So what does this mean? I think this means that we are making tournament lineups like this from now on to kind of get over this issue. One lineup for chalk at QB, one lineup for running back at QB, one lineup for wide receiver at QB. That's it. Because that's the new way of what we're doing with the prices. Because you've got to be in one of those winning chalk lanes, it seems, if you want the payout. This is the way that we're actually going to do it and give it a shot on DraftKings so that we can stay ahead of them. There's a good housekeeping for this week because we need to start winning more money in DFS actionable plan so that we can actually do that. Now, seasonal, we don't want to forget about seasonal. Let's remember to get sticky. Top of the show, I said we can see the whites of their eyes. That's a famous quote for Bunker Hill, right? Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Don't react too early. Don't fire until you see the enemy close up, right? Because we have saved this ammo. We want to make sure that we get them. So we need them real close. We got to make sure that we hit them, right? Don't overreact. That's the kind of what that statement means. But now we can see the whites of their eyes. Now it is time to react when you think about seasonal. So you can't afford to have L's. You got to be on your winning streak to win out for the championship. And so the enemy is up close now. You need to get sticky, is what the point is. You're facing somebody. You're not confident in certain aspects of your game, your defense, your kicker, your flex player. Remember, we've said this a couple of weeks, prior on the show, but you got to attach yourself to your opponent if and all possible. He's got, whoever at quarterback, get a wide receiver in that flex spot, get his kicker, get some defense that you think you can stream. The point being, you can't afford to lose. If you have deficiencies, this is the way we can get over. I can't make somebody drop a defense so you can pick up a better one, but you can stream what's out there and you can do that okay. Playing a receiver that goes with the opponent's quarterback works well because the wide receiver, if a quarterback was 10 for 10, 2 touchdowns, no incompletions, all to the same wide receiver, guess who would get more points out of that? The quarterback or the wide receiver? It's the wide receiver. If you're doing half-point PPR, if you're doing PPR, if you're doing standard, guess what, folks? It's still the wide receiver. So the wide receiver gets the yardage as well. He's getting the catches. That matters more for him. And so if you got that deficient flex spot, get his wide receiver in there. You don't have a tight end, get his tight end in there. Maybe he doesn't score to that tight end, but if he does, you are attached to it. So you make his touchdown with his, quarterback worth that much less. You got his kicker. Now you get an extra point if he scores a touchdown. So now his touchdowns, which are worth 6 points, really kind of worth 5 points now. If you are getting the receiver that he tossed it to, now it's kind of a deficiency for him to even toss it to your guy, right? So, guys, this is what we mean when we say get sticky. Thursday Night Football was billed as a snore. It was supposed to be the New England Patriots going into Pittsburgh to play this boring 3-3 game, and often showed up early for New England. Bit of defense early set the tone, and then Pittsburgh was able to hop back into it a little bit later. Trubisky finally found his lane, but look, he is not the guy. Is simply what the issue is. Watt was banged up a little bit. If you don't have him, you don't have much on defense. But Zappy took a few steps forward. He looked decent. Throwing those downfield passes, looking off at the checkoff guy and then throwing the ball, that's probably the most impressive thing. That's the thing that I want you guys to take away from the Thursday Night Football game is Zappy's second touchdown pass to Hunter Henry, where he's doing the wheel route up the sideline. He catches it over the top of the safety. As the announcers point out, it was Kirk Herbstreit. You're not supposed to be able to make that throw. He makes that throw. That's great. And it was a nice throw. He threw it on the money. Now, to me, that's not the most impressive thing because I think Kirk is right. A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, you're not supposed to be able to make that throw. And if he wants to challenge that every week, I think these NFL guys will make him regret that. But the point there, though, is more about the fact of what he did before he threw that ball, which is why he got the playoff. The point is, he looked down at the check down receivers. He stared at them while he threw the pass accurately and deep. That, to me, is very impressive. That, to me, is something that I've not seen Mac Jones or a lot of these quarterbacks do. So you look for these little nuanced things to kind of show you who is progressing, who is not. That was awesome. It was a good game for him. We'll have to see where this goes, but certainly a huge loss for Pittsburgh when you are in the thick of a playoff race. You got these offensive problems. You fired Matt Canada, supposedly turning things around. That doesn't matter if you don't have a quarterback. Trubisky's not the answer. I'm not sure Mason Rudolph is the answer, but at least Trubisky ended the game on a high note. They were able to kind of get back into it a little bit, but turning the ball over, inconsistent quarterback play, it's going to be very hard to win in the NFL with that, regardless of who you got on defense or what other players you have on offense. So, nice win for New England. They've been few and far in between, so glad they got that one. So, just to kind of round out, the housekeeping here, playoffs are around the corner, so we got to start thinking about if we play DFS and things like that. There's going to be players that are more valuable because their teams are chasing, not necessarily locked up a playoff spot, right? But chasing still, and so you got to think about these teams like your Tampa Bays, your Atlantas. You guys are going to see we'll have exposure to these teams this week because you want to play for players that are playing for something. You want to be attached to somebody like a Baker Mayfield. Atlanta's in the driver's seat at the moment for that division playoff spot, but it's not out of reach. He doesn't have a contract after this year. Obviously, wants to come back, trying to prove that he can be the man, be the answer there. Mike Evans has been Mike Evans, consistent, Mr. Consistent, doing what he's doing. All this to say, they are right there, and Todd Bowles is fighting for his job too. He very well might be shown the door if they have a couple of embarrassing losses. So there's a lot of moving pieces. All that to say, I want to be invested in that. And for Atlanta, they don't have some secure, huge grasp on the division. To be quite honest with you, they're playing Tampa Bay this week, and they're right there. So, this is an opportunity for both teams. That's what I mean when I say we want to get invested in these playoff teams. So you got to be thinking about your Tampa Bays and a lot of teams in that NFC South division for that matter. The Saints, obviously, of course, still in the race. These are the players. Anybody planning on a contract coming up? We want to think about that too. But in terms of certain playoff teams, you've got those teams I've mentioned, but you also need to be thinking about Buffalo, who's trying to play their way in. Tough game against Kansas City this week. They can't afford many losses, if any. So thinking about that as a dangerous team, a team we want to attach ourselves to, somebody who's still alive in the playoffs. Jacksonville, very much alive, but Indianapolis surging. This is the landscape out here right now. You've also, you've got the Eagles hanging out there. The Cowboys this week going to have to try to beat them so that they can have a marquee victory. You can't beat up all the bad teams and lose to all the good teams. It's kind of what the theme has been. So we will see if they can rebuff that this week. The Broncos are in the thick of things too in the AFC West. They are right there, and a couple of disappointing weeks for them, but they've rattled off like 5 wins in a row, and so that consistency is what is keeping them alive right now. And every week, Sean Payton is whipping it a little bit closer and closer to what he wants. So a team to be thinking about there as well. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins, that looking for the playoffs too. So we want to keep them in mind. And every week, really thinking about Tyreek Hill, just because he's reaching some records in terms of like seasonal yardage and touchdowns and things like that. So it doesn't look like they're going to need to be eating up. But just want to start giving you guys a frame of mind about who to think about in the playoffs and why to think about them. So that's our housekeeping for this week. Let's slide up to Would You Rather. Pull up these flex opportunities here. And since this is Friday, we're not doing it on Thursday like usual. We won't have to worry about Thursday night conundrums. But let's hop into it. Calvin Ridley or Chuba Hubbard this week. So Calvin Ridley, in one sense, you want to say he's in a good spot because you see more attention with Christian Kirk going down, but they're playing Cleveland this week, and so that is rather problematic. On the other side, Chuba Hubbard and the Panthers. Look, we know that offense isn't necessarily setting the world on fire, but they are playing this week. Excuse me, the Panthers. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the Panthers here, see who they're playing. They're playing the New Orleans Saints this week. So, not a lot of opportunity on the ground for Hubbard, although he's been good over the past couple of weeks. If I had to choose between the two, I would say probably Ridley, even though Kurt was probably a little better against the zone or maybe even man coverage. So, I think Ridley's going to have to try to step into his spot with the extra production that's going to be there without Kirk, but it remains to be seen. I will take that over Chuba Hubbard against New Orleans this week. Taysom Hill or DeAndre Swift this week. And Taysom Hill, we just talked about the Saints, they're playing the Panthers, but Philadelphia and Dallas. So I guess I could say Taysom Hill here just because Swift has been pretty quiet. I feel like I'd like to go with him, but for some weird reason, New Orleans loves getting Swift involved or Hill involved and finding problematic ways for other teams to deal with his involvement. So I think we can say that there. Whereas maybe for the Philadelphia Eagles, more of an opportunity to get Goddard back involved, who's back from injury this week. Hopefully I'm wrong for Swift's sake, but just been down on him a little bit lately. Alexander Madison, or would I rather play Zay Flowers this week? Now, Madison's in a nice spot, but he's been so inconsistent. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. This is a great spot against the Rams zone defense. I think he will get a lot of looks and targets. I like his production opportunity there. Joe Mixon this week or DJ Moore. I'm going to take Joe Mixon. I do like Fields this week. But more, I think I need to temper expectations. Joe Mixon should be in a nice spot. Plus, he's got the run game rolling last week. Quarterback doing just enough to keep him viable. Jake Ferguson at tight end for Dallas this week versus Philly or Zay Flowers. We'll go Zay Flowers again. Much better opportunity there with Flowers. Zach Moss this week or Elijah Moore. Zach Moss, don't be fooled by last week. Tennessee was a very tough matchup. This is a much more attainable matchup this week. We'll go to Zach Moss if nobody else will, but I think he may be popular. Raheem Mostert or Garrett Wilson. A-Chain is back, so I'm coming down off Mostert. I don't want to share the opportunity. I want, the guy with the job. Wilson is not in a great spot this week versus the Houston defense, though. And then the quarterback play has been inconsistent. I think of the two, though, I'm going to have to say Wilson just because with Mostert not even guaranteed to get the most touches, I don't want to go there. Gus Edwards this week, or would I rather play Quentin Johnson? Quentin Johnson can't catch a cold. You gave him a couple of tissues, and if you sat him outside with his boxers on in the rain, he couldn't catch a cold. So Quentin Johnson or Gus Edwards, I'm going to go with Gus Edwards, even though he's obviously been sharing time with Keon Mitchell. Still, Gus is in the mix there, so we'll go with Gus until Johnson actually does something. We'll keep poking him with a stick. Austin Keller, or would I rather play Brandon Ayuk this week? Austin Keller. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Eckler. It's been a long week. Austin Eckler or Brandon Ayuk. I will go with Brandon Ayuk. So the 49ers are playing the Seattle Seahawks, and the Chargers, for their part, are this week going up against Denver. I would rather. I know Eckler's in maybe a little bit of a better spot, I think, but he's not been very productive since coming back from that injury. So we'll go with Ayuk, who's been pretty productive lately. Simple as that. He's in a good spot. I know McCaffrey is as well. That's the only thing holding back a true, proper endorsement of Ayuk. It's just we don't know what we're going to get because everybody's kind of in play for San Fran. Cooper Kupp this week or A.J. Dillon, and the Packers are playing the Giants on Monday night in New York. And of course, the Rams will be squaring off against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. So, for this one, I think you got to go with A.J. Dillon just because, again, if Aaron Jones is out, it's Dillon's job, even though his productivity is kind of capped. We know what we're getting. But the floor is much worse for Kupp, and, he could snap and have a great week, but at the same time, we haven't seen his involvement. I don't know what's going on there. I think in terms of the Rams offense, you got a lot of opportunity to play Nakua when you play this, man scenario this week when I think they're going to see versus Green Bay. So, or excuse me, rather, versus Baltimore. So, it's hard to go with a guy who hasn't been producing, but on the other side of things with Dylan, his production is capped. So we'll say if this is something that you need safety, you need to make sure you don't get blamed, then it's Dylan. But if you need the home run, you're facing a big juggernaut, you don't have a chance, you need more of an upside thing, to play Cup. Okay, Jake Ferguson or Jonathan Mingo this week. You got to go with Ferguson because he's a part of the offense. And I know Mingo had a good week last week, but Carolina is not consistent. Bryce Young is, seems to be taking some steps forward, but we just really can't, you know, depend on that from week to week. Ferguson's a much more stable situation. And then finally, Dallas Goddard or Javonte Williams this week. I'll go with Williams. It's a better matchup for Williams in those Broncos. But, Goddard's not in a terrible spot. Again, he's not the highest guy in the pecking order. I think they're going to be itching to get him involved. But Dallas not terrible against the tight end, and I do think that the Chargers offer some opportunity for Javonte Williams. So we'll say Javonte, but I'm not low on Dallas Goddard this week. But that will round out who you'd rather. Now you guys know who I would rather for week 14. And we've already gone over Thursday night football, so we will pick it up from there and reload with Tampa Bay Atlanta on Sunday. And Tampa Bay, as we said earlier in the show, still in the thick of the playoffs. They're not going away. Mike Evans is in play for sure, way more than Godwin. I'm not a big fan of Rachaad White's opportunities running the football this week versus this Atlanta defense. But Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield will be able to do enough to stay in this football game. They lost to Atlanta in Tampa Bay earlier this year, so they're trying to get the split on the road. It's going to be tough. Atlanta, I think London is definitely in play versus this Tampa Bay's on defense. I also think that Bijan Robinson can find a little bit of room, but just emphasis on a little bit. So in the DFS world, not too overly popular there. Pitts would be in play, but I have no confidence in that. It's really London that I'm thinking about for tournament plays. Both of these defenses, I think, have an opportunity to give up a little more than they did the last time around. I really like the Baker to Evans connection thing, but I think you can just play Evans and get away with that in this one. These two teams I'm struggling to figure out which of these teams is better, but I do think that Atlanta has a great opportunity this week. I'd love for my heart to say Tampa Bay wins, but I think Atlanta shuts the door on Tampa Bay this week. I think Atlanta puts some separation between themselves. They're at home. They already beat Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. They're at home now. Tampa Bay's 5-7. Atlanta's 6-6. They're going to get to 7-6 as Atlanta and try to deal with the Saints. Reload. Indianapolis going to Cincinnati. So for Cincinnati's part, I think last week we did see that they're still able to get production from Jamar Chase, which is fantastic. And this is another great week for him to get production. Just, having diminished play at quarterback isn't killing that team's, production, even though it might be killing their season, if that makes sense. So, but I do think that Jamar Chase is in play again this week for sure. Browning was serviceable. He's proven he can get the ball to Chase. And so we like that. But it's really Mixon again. I think Mixon took a step forward last week. This is a defense that's vulnerable to the run as well. And if they can get that kind of blocking up front again, which I'm confident they can win the line of scrimmage, then Cincinnati can use their run to establish themselves and then try to get Chase involved. Boyd also in play, even though he's not been consistent this week. This would be the week to take the pick. I'm a little less high on Higgins this week, but that's on the Cincinnati side. On the Indianapolis side, I love Michael Pittman this week. Smash opportunity for him. Whichever coverage he faces from Cincinnati this week, I think he'll have an opportunity to get some production, and then that target share just being around that 23 to 25% range. they're going to be going to him early and often, and I can appreciate that. I also like Zach Moss this week as well. Kylan Granson, I mean, if I had to pick one of the tight ends, it would be him, but he's still splitting time with the rest of the bunch. So there's that. But in terms of the wide receivers, definitely Pittman this week. Feeling very good about him. That's cash game opportunity right there in that one for Indianapolis. Cincinnati's going to be tough. They're going to be tough at home, but I do think that Gardner Minshew will provide just slightly better play at quarterback, and that's going to be the difference. Indianapolis defense is no slouch. I think they're going to be able to show up in the end and do what they need to do to close this one out and get a victory on the road. Reload. Jacksonville going on the road to Cleveland. We don't know if they're going to get Trevor Lawrence yet. Even if they do, it's going to be a tough one at Cleveland, playing that Cleveland defense. And so if you're the Cleveland Browns, you've had some struggles lately, but there's that. Cleveland also being coy about who they're going to play. Not saying that they're going to play Joe Flacco or they're going to give DTR another run. Look, Flacco got 17.2 DK points last week. You would be stupid not to play him. I feel like they got to go with him, but they're just trying to hold their cards a little closer to the vest, if you will. And if they go with him, then I think Cooper's okay. Elijah Moore is fine. But really, I think this is a big help for Ford in the run game. As we've seen, Flacco, he has the ability to hit Hunt coming out of the backfield. He got a touchdown last week doing that. So these guys become more in play. That offense is a little more lively with Flacco. You cannot deny that. So I'm anticipating, with this game analysis that he is a part of the offense and not DTR, who I think is just negligible to put him back out there. So, another week into the system. Hopefully we can see some of these Flacco mistakes removed, but we know this is his MO in terms of his career and his life. But they got the Cleveland defense, as we said. I don't think Jacksonville stands a chance in this one if you don't have Lawrence at quarterback. Etienne in the run game would be the way to go versus this defense, but they're going to be able to just stuff and put 8 in the box if you don't have a viable passing game. So it's very hard for me to recommend anything. Cleveland's pretty good against the tight end, but I think Evan Ingram is going to be key again this week, and he's proven valuable in not so great matchups before this season. So why not? But I think Jacksonville tries to keep it tough via the defense, and if they can get a turnover to, they'll make it interesting. But I got Cleveland winning this game, and I've got Flacco playing in that victory to get them to 8-5. Reload. Houston going on the road to the Jets. Again, the Jets, same thing. You can't have inconsistent play at quarterback. If they're going to go back and revisit the play at quarterback and swap again, I think that's good. I think you probably do need to go back and take a look at why are we even playing Tim Boyle? He's obviously not ready at this point, is what I would say. So I think maybe they were. I was hearing something on I think Pro PFF or whatever this week about them just wanted to sit him down and get him reacquainted before they get him back out there. Him meaning Zach Wilson. But I think he gives them the best opportunity to win. So he should be out there. Obviously, Omar Rogers is practicing. Simeon's going to be the backup, as it should be. So we're going to get to see a little bit more of Wilson this week, which is a good thing for Garrett Wilson. I think that puts him in play a little bit more. Against the zone defense, he should be fine. Houston, as we called out, a couple weeks ago versus Denver, that they, realizing for picks for that game that they're going to give it up late in the end. They have these exciting games, but think about why that is, because the defense is faltering big at certain points in the game. So, Garrett Wilson for sure in play. Breece Hall, I think this is better for him, having Garrett Wilson back out there, certainly, because you're going to have some consistency there. But that's really all on the Jet side. Their defense should show up and play, though. Try to keep the game close, but they're ultimately going to be outmatched. Houston's defense is not terrible. D'Amico Ryan's guys are going to show up and play for sure. But on the offensive side of the ball for Houston, Stroud, it's going to be a tougher defense for him, but I still think Nico Collins, a great opportunity to get him the ball here. One-on-one man scenarios, he is very dominant. He's been consistent. I think he's firmly in play this week, regardless of it being the Jets, even though that does make it a much tougher matchup. But we're going to see what his mettle is made of this week for sure. Now, running the ball, I'm not sure who gets more touches. It seems like Pierce takes over more this week, more. But I'm backing off of both of those guys. Not excited for production there. I think Houston finds a way. Noah Brown's going to step up this week. We've seen him do that in the past, so no problem suggesting that'll happen again. And Schultz is in play too. Houston's going to find a way. I think their defense ends up showing up later and proving that they're a part of this game too. So I like the opportunity for Houston to go on the road and get a big victory against a reeling Jets team, even though the Jets are going to play better than they have been. Reload. Rams on the road going to Baltimore. Baltimore, they want to play this man defense okay. Puka Nacua, kind of the better target there, if you will. But I think just inconsistency from the Rams. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the better defense of Baltimore. So I'm tempering expectations for Stafford, tempering expectations for the wide receiver core. I think even Williams on the ground is going to have some struggles. I just like Baltimore ultimately more. I know the Rams are playing for the playoffs though, so that's the thing that we got to look at. And I think the passing game is the way that they keep themselves in the game. Obviously, honestly, I should rather say. But if I had to pick between one of the two wide receivers, I know Nakua had the better week last week, but I think you do go to Cooper Kupp this week, especially if you got him in season. I think you can play him the field okay. They're going to find a way to get him the ball. And their backs are against the wall, so they've got to go with what they know works, and we've seen that work in the past for them. Baltimore, though, looks like they got a great chance to get a victory at home here. Lamar Jackson will do just enough. I don't think he's DFS worthy, but he can do just enough. He can get the ball to where it needs to go. Namely, I think the Flowers, okay, likely kind of in play, but really I think this is about getting the ball to Flowers for Jackson. And then the run game will do just enough to kind of, be serviceable, but the Baltimore defense should lead the way. It'll be a gritty, grimy Baltimore kind of game unless the Ravens can blow them out the waters, which I don't see. So I think Baltimore comes away with a quiet victory to move on to 10-3 on the year. Reload. Detroit to Chicago. So unless Chicago, gives us poor weather, what I think we're going to see from Chicago is Fields, like last game, not have the greatest passing numbers, but supplant that with the rushing. Detroit has had a problem containing him on the ground. I think that continues for sure. So I like that. Not really high on any of the receivers besides Cole Kmet. Herbert, fine, but I just don't see a lot of production opportunity there. Bears defense, not sure they're going to hold up. On the other side of things, Detroit, I do like Goff. Amon-Ra St. Brown is in play. He's a great play, one of the best plays on the weekend. He will have an opportunity to carve up this Bears zone defense for sure. I think they go to him quite often, and it works very successfully. Laporta's in play, but less so than Brown. The running backs are decently in play. The Bears have been better against the run, but I think Montgomery, revenge game, he was decent against them earlier in the year, just a couple weeks ago, and this is an opportunity in Chicago to let him, be the hammer, and I think we can expect that. Chicago wants to pridefully win this game, split split with this team, but I don't see it happening. I think Detroit goes on the road to Chicago, gets a very valuable, very rare win in Chicago to get to 10-3. Reload. Carolina at New Orleans. So again, Carolina inconsistent. I don't see, Chuba Hubbard has been fantastic though. Again, New Orleans is just strong against the run, so I don't see the best opportunity for him. But if you got him in season, you can play him and feel fine about that. They're going to do their best to get his involvement there. Any other receivers, probably Thielen against this zone, but he has to deal with the inconsistency of his quarterback. We all know that. On the other side of things, looks like we're going to get to see Carr. He's past concussion protocol. Seems like a miracle to me. He never plays. I'm tired of playing him in DFS because he never finishes the game. This guy gets knocked out all the time. This guy is in the tent all the time. Some people want to say he's gritty. I'm looking at it the other way. Paper. He can't stay out there. So at some point in the game, he's coming out, and that hampers the production that you're paying for. So, but in real life, terms though, Olave is in a great spot here for sure. Like we said, they try to do the trickery with Taysom Hill. I think at the goal line, especially because of the paper quarterback. But Kamara is the bigger play here. He's a great fantasy play this weekend. If you can afford it on DFS, go for it. Really like the opportunity that he presents this week for sure. Olave as a wide receiver. I'm not really looking at anybody else there. But the New Orleans defense, I would say, also in a very good opportunity. So they're going to have to keep pace with Atlanta. They need this one, and they can get it and get to 6-7. Reload. Minnesota going to Vegas. So the Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce, hoping to play upset here. Minnesota was being a little coy about who's going to start at quarterback, and now they've come out and just said it's going to be Dobbs. And I think he'll have a better game than last week. He's getting Jefferson back. Very excited about that for him. We know he loves the tight end, though. So Hockenson in play, Jefferson in play. The better opportunity against Vegas is on the ground with Madison, even though the Vikings just don't seem to, be willing to rely on the run like that. So whichever way they want to do it, they had a great opportunity to go on the road and get this victory. Coming off the bye, they've had a couple of weeks to prepare for it, so I love that for them as well. On the other side of things for Vegas, I mean, Devontae Adams is hard to bet against, but in terms of just blowing it up with his numbers, I don't think so. I think Jacoby Myers is in a great spot against this Vikings defense this week. I like the opportunity that he presents and the price that he brings along for himself on sites like DFS or DK this weekend for DFS. If you got him a seasonal, play him and feel good. I feel very good about Jacoby Myers this week. He has had a consistent year. He's been good. And this is going to be another good week for him, no doubt. I like him. I'm less on Jacobs this week. But if you have him in seasonal, play him and feel fine about it. Like I said, Minnesota on the road. Dobb plays better. I think Justin Jefferson shows us he is back, and Hockenson plays second fiddle, but still is able to find some production as well. And the Minnesota defense, I think, will get a jolt from getting their best offensive player coming back too, putting Vegas' back on the wall. They get out of this one 7-6, keep those playoff hopes are rolling. Reload. Moving along in these afternoon games on Sunday now, Seattle at San Fran. Seattle, sad for them they didn't get the victory last week, but they played so much better on that Thursday game. They've had a long week to get ready for San Fran, so they should be ready to roll. They're catching San Fran coming off an emotional victory against Philly. This is the time to do it. So Seattle, I don't like them for the game, but we've seen Metcalf kind of come out of the shell a little bit. So I think versus this San Francisco defense, it's a great opportunity for him. Again, lock it in place, sure, but it's more about Metcalf this week, I would say, no doubt. Not even looking at the tight ends in Seattle, but Walker also not necessarily excited about what his, production can bring just because San Fran blows the doors off you, so you got to try to keep up, and he gets lost in that shuffle, I think. But Metcalf, like him for sure. I think Gino either plays it too conservative and it doesn't work out because of that, or he lets it rip a little, and I think he makes a few mistakes. But on the San Fran side of things, McCaffrey, this will be a McCaffrey game. He can get in the box a couple of times. The path to victory on the ground looks very positive for San Francisco. But everybody's in play. Kittle's in play. Both of the wide receivers, Ayuk and Debo. I like Ayuk a little more than Debo this week, but everybody, Purdy, all of it. Above all, though, it's McCaffrey this week. The San Francisco defense, I think, has an opportunity to play better. People might not be as excited about them coming off the Seattle game versus Dallas last week, but I think you should play them and feel fine about it. Seattle rolls and wins this one. San Fran. I can't see Seattle coming into San Fran and walking out with that victory. San Fran wins this one. Seattle chunks down to 6-7, in my opinion. Reload. All right, out to Kansas City. Buffalo going to KC. Buffalo needs this one. They're 6-6. They need this for the playoff hopes. Look, both of these teams have underperformed versus what we assume they would be going into the year. That's very apparent. We know that. From what we've seen, though, here's how I think it should shake out. Kansas City not going to have the services of Isaiah Pacheco this week, and so they're going to have to rely on Edwards-Helaire and probably McKinnon, but it looks like more Edwards-Helaire. I want to play him for DFS purposes, even if it's a split with McKinnon. He's just so cheap, and so we get that free square. We got to use it. I think Moss is the same free square this week, especially because people won't want to play him. coming off of the bad numbers versus Tennessee, but that's a good run defense, as we point out week in and week out. Better week for Indianapolis against Cincinnati, and decent week this week, I think, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire versus this Buffalo team. Buffalo's been making mistakes lately. Kansas City's defense is pretty good, so I just feel like the opportunity for them to be ahead and running the ball out persists. Now, in terms of receivers, you're looking at Rashee Rice. That's really the only dependable guy. And obviously, you got your Kelsey, but it's just those two and Mahomes. But you got to temper expectations because that offense is not clicking on all cylinders. Like I say, the defense is going to be pivotal, in terms of their production in this one at home. Now, Buffalo, though, facing this Kansas City defense, it's all about Stephon Diggs, but I just think he will see a fair amount of attention. So can he beat the zone? Sure. But there's just been so much inconsistency from Josh Allen. So we have to see what we get there. But Diggs should be in play. I like him most of the receivers. I'm not really high on Gabe Davis this week or Knox or anything. Or, I'm sorry, Kincaid at all. But I will say that Cook is in a good place on the ground versus Kansas City if Buffalo is willing to go there, which I think that they should. These teams very much mirror each other in my mind right now in terms of their struggles, which is ironic depending on what we thought both these teams would be going into this one. So I'm going to say this, though. Allen has been too inconsistent, and I think the Kansas City defense has been a little too good. That's going to be the part of this game that we have to figure out what happens because I think Mahomes will be able to do a little bit more of take what he gets from the Buffalo defense. Buffalo hasn't been terrible on defense, but Mahomes hasn't been as bad as Allen has been. And so I just think Kansas City is a bit better and they're at home, and Buffalo shows the opportunity to throw up some mistakes at the end of the game. That's going to be the difference in my opinion. Reload. Denver going out to the Chargers, going out to LA to see the Chargers. So again, friendly environment for Russ, but can they actually produce? We like Sutton this week. I'd stay away from Russ if you don't have to. But Sutton's in a great spot. Like him much less than Judy. Or, I'm sorry, much more than Judy. Javonte Williams also in a good spot. So Sutton and Williams. Like I said, can't fall into that trap. Last week we tried to go there with Russ Wilson. I mean, the guy could have had 3 touchdowns for Christ's sake. I mean, and it just didn't work out that way. But they're in a good spot. I think their defense has an opportunity to play well this week against a Chargers team that has struggled on offense for sure. The other thing about the Denver defense is we think about them as the team that put up all those points versus Miami, but they still scored 2 points as a team on DraftKings that week. Nearly every week they've come away with positive points. So they're cheap on DK this week, and I think that they have a chance to just be in the game versus the Chargers, who've been making mistakes left and right, shooting themselves in the foot. They don't have a receiving core, the Chargers, outside of Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's in a good spot versus the zone this week, but it's just him. It's just him, and he's going to get all the looks on the targets. Now, Gerald Everett is also in a good spot, especially versus this Denver defense. They're terrible against the tight end, but Everett is not going to dominate yardage. What he's going to be is standing in the end zone and just gets a touchdown, right? He'll have like 2 catches for 7 yards and a touchdown. But we'll take that in DFS because it's going to help us pay down so we can pay up at wide receiver. So we like him. We like Allen. Those are the plays there. Herbert, not really concerned about playing him as much. Like I said, playing a little bit more mistake-branded football, so we're not going to go there if we don't have to. But in terms of these two teams, I think Denver can walk in here and get this victory. It's very close. You're looking at both these teams still in the playoff hunt. So Chargers very much need this victory. They're going to come out excited to get it, but Denver has been getting progressively better each week. This is another good test for them, but it's an attainable test. And I like this just chunk by chunk getting better by better. The good ones do it that way, folks. So picked against Denver last week. We're going to go back to Denver, though, this week. Denver rolls on the road. Reload. Sunday Night Football. Philly at Dallas. Said earlier, Dallas has got to get the monkey off its back. You need a victory versus a good team. Simple as that. And this is a good opportunity for Dallas, too, to get a victory. They're playing well. Philadelphia is playing well, but they just came off that loss to San Francisco. So I really feel like they're going to be itching for, you know, a pick me up kind of a thing. Dallas running into them at the wrong time. I think Philadelphia is going to win this game. AJ Brown is in play. This dude should have a monster game. Devontae Smith, mm, less of him for me, and more about Goddard getting back involved. Like I was saying earlier, versus playing Swift. I think Goddard is a great opportunity to come back this week, insert into the lineup and assert himself. So I like him and Brown. Then Smith will be there. Then maybe Swift after that. But obviously, Jalen Hurts in play for sure. It doesn't matter if you're playing Dallas, who's been pretty good on defense. When you can do the tush push and also get it to Brown, Hurts is dangerous. And so he's, in a good spot on the road with Dallas. We know they're going to want to give them everything they can. Prescott also in a good spot versus this defense. CeeDee Lamb in a crush spot versus this defense. I mean, both those wide receivers in a very good spot. Ferguson, I like him a little bit less, but he has some opportunity playing the season. If you got him, I feel fine about it. But the ground game for Dallas is going to have to do something to kind of keep that team in the game. They need to establish themselves. Haven't seen a lot from Pollard and Rico Dowdle, so want to see a little bit more there. But barring seeing that, I don't see how they can come away with the victory here. Philadelphia, not the best defense in the world, but good enough to force Dallas into some mistakes, I think. Dallas has been a pretty good defense, but Philly is tried and true and tested versus so many tough teams this year. And I want to say that, they are a better team than Dallas. I don't think they fear playing them. I think they love nothing more than going to Dallas and get that victory. Is it possible for Dallas to win? Sure. But I just see that Philly is all business, baby. So I'm going to take them. And reload. And now we get down to Monday night. We got two games at the same time on Monday night. Green Bay at the Giants is the first one. Green Bay, look, they should be able to get the ball to, I think, Jalen Reed. I like him, whether it's man or zone, but basically versus this Giants defense. But the Giants played the most man. So they're getting it to Reed. I think people will be on Watson or whatever. That's a mistake. It's Reed is what it's looking like to me. And then maybe a little Dobbs. But that's where I would go. Dylan, he's going to get the touches. And so we have to have interest there. But I just think that, in terms of, who gets on Green Bay, probably Reed and Dobbs. We'll have to see if Love can continue his recent trend of better play, of just making the throws that he needs to make, essentially. But those will be the opportunities for him. And the Green Bay defense will have to show up. Now, on the Giants side of things, Mr. DeVito and company, I think they just continue to spread the ball around. I mean, maybe Wendell Robinson is going to key in on some guy, but I just think that for the Giants part on Monday, he spreads the ball around. I think Saquon is involved, and then the defense tries to, shore themselves up properly. So it's going to be a test, though, against Green Bay, who's coming in pretty confident. But I do think that the Giants are going to win this game. They're not the worst team in the NFL by a mile. And they are a credible NFL franchise, a credible NFL team. It's tough to go into somebody's backyard and beat them, especially when their backs are against the wall. We know that things aren't going well, and there's whispers about firing the DC and this and that, but the Giants are going to show up and they're going to play football on Monday night. And I do think that if DeVito can spread the ball around, they get enough from Saquon, the defense will help them out in the end. Love has played well, but I just don't buy this quick turnaround. I think there'll be some regression. And if not, that's awesome for him. And that's great for Green Bay because they really do need to keep pace with the Vikings. But unfortunately, I see it as the Giants taking this one at home in an upset. And then we get to our final shot. So we're making a good one and reload for Monday, Tennessee and Miami. Titans going on the road. I think it's the Tyreek Hill show, Tua to Hill. I'm not even worried about Tua, but obviously in seasonal play him. This is more about Tyreek Hill being able to break the top off of this defense easily. No questions asked. And from there, it opens up the world for everybody else. Now, I will say I don't think the running game is poised to be in a great spot for Tennessee versus Tennessee. So whether it's Mostert or Achane, I would sort of temper my expectations and just maybe focus on Hill, focus on Waddle, like that, and Tua, obviously. But I don't know if the running backs will be productive, although they'll get the touches. So you don't want to waste your time beating your head into a brick wall. Miami's defense continuing to play better, and I think that this is a great opportunity against a weaker Tennessee team. They don't have consistent play at quarterback, so you want to say DeAndre Hopkins, but couldn't say for sure. Couldn't say for sure. Outside of him, is there anybody else? I mean, you know, Henry, if he's going to play, I think you can, for a seasonal aspect, be fine with that. He's not going to set the world on fire, but Miami does a great job of scoring points. And so I don't necessarily think that they'll have an opportunity to grind it out the way that Tennessee wants. If Miami can do what they want to do, which is put points on the board, that sort of changes the complexion. Maybe you then get some receiving yards from Henry, which is fine. But there's just so many limitations to Tennessee. I can't see them going into Miami and getting this victory on Monday night. I think Miami will be led by the defense. Don't know that they necessarily have to go crazy, but it could be one of those games where Tyreek Hill just gets like 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's prime time. Who knows? I don't think the competition standing in front of them is gonna, be a problem for him. And then, of course, if you got Waddle, you should play him and feel great about it too. But those are the games. That's how I see the scripts line it up for this week. So hopefully that helps you guys make the picks that you need to. And we'll get to our DFS picks. I'll keep it short and sweet for you folks. So look, going with Flacco this week, he's just too cheap. $4,700 on DK. We cannot avoid that. And again, like I was saying at the top of the show, kind of ranting a little bit, you look at some of these prices like too good to be true. This is that. And so we need to lean into that and figure out where we get different elsewhere. And so I think that's going to be wide receiver. Now, so we got Flacco at quarterback. Wide receiver, Mike Evans, $7,700. Great play. He had like 6 catches for 82 and a touchdown last time, but I think he can even surpass that this time versus this team this year. Pittman also, as we talked about, in a great spot, $7,300, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown. So those three, Amon-Ra is $8,200. So look, we're able to pay up by paying down for Flacco. So I want to get those 3 guys in there stat. You don't have Land, you don't have Brown on the main slate. So outside of Diggs, I think I'm getting top production from these guys. Have to have them all in there. We'll pay down the tight end, Gerald Everett, $3,400. I think Hawkinson's probably, a pretty decent play on the day, and you never want to count out Kelsey. But at the price for a guy that can just be standing around for a touchdown, we will take that. And then at running back to make this work, we're just going to go very typical, right? So Zach Moss, $5,900. Play the free square, hoping people are off of him because of last week. And that was against Tennessee, though. And so they're a little stouter against the run. This should be a better week for him. $5,900, great price. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, $4,200. Talked about the reasoning there. Too cheap again. So these are the plays that we know will be popular, but we're going to separate ourselves at wide receiver. In flex, Jacoby Myers, $5,700. Minnesota, all about that zone. That zone defense. So Myers can break the zone. I think he's a great play. He will go under own. And this is what I mean about separating ourselves. So even if we get ownership out of St. Brown or Evans or Pittman, I think Myers is where we differentiate ourselves, and it should be enough. And then for defense, you got a couple of options down there that won't kill you, but I'm probably going to play the Broncos at $2,800, citing, as I told you guys just a couple of moments ago, that this is a team that is just getting positive points, even against that Miami offense that blew them out the water. Still got 2 points on DK for fantasy purposes. So that is the way to go this week, in my opinion. So, guys, those are the picks. That's what I got for you. Hopefully that helps you guys make your picks, and good luck if you are playing DFS and seasonal. On to Valhalla, baby. Let's go get it. Let's go win. As always, thank you for listening to the process. And then where can you find us? www.tigerbombsae.com. That is the Tiger Bomb website. You can listen to the process or watch the process at that website if you prefer, through the YouTube page link. But basically anywhere that you listen to your podcast, right? So Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, you can find us there. Facebook or X or Twitter or whatever, we're on there as well. You can find us the same way everywhere, guys. Tiger Search for Tiger Bomb Sports Audio Entertainment. This will come up. You can like and subscribe, whatever's applicable for the platform you're listening on, and be able to catch the other episodes of the other podcasts that we do, like true crime, baseball, et cetera, et cetera. There's a couple other things, right? So there you go. That's how we can stay connected. Peace.